Hello and welcome to another free code session. My name is Jason Bach and this is a special edition of FreeCodeSession. And I want to do a quick demo of where my work has progressed with the new rewrite of Rocks. So just to back up real quick, Rocks is a framework that I started writing about 5 years ago. It's a mocking framework. It's very similar to mocking frameworks like N-Substitute, MOQ, Fake It Easy, and other ones, in that it builds a mock type at runtime that you can use in tests to mock out dependencies and set expectations and verify that those happened. Okay. Now, I'm not going to talk about whether mocks are a good thing or a bad thing. I think they have their place. I think they can also be overused. So that's another debate discussion for another time. The reason I did this is not because I wanted to be a quote unquote competitor to any of the other frameworks that were out there. That was never my intent. It's primarily a vehicle for me to use the compiler API to generate code that in mocking frameworks is usually done by doing IL generation, which is not an easy thing to do. Okay. So that was one reason why I did it. Ironically, the way Rocks works right now is that it uses a lot of reflection to figure out all the information it needs to do from the type that you want to mock to generate all the C# code. And that's the other thing. It hardly uses the compiler API. It generates a bunch of strings, mashes them all up together, and says to the compiler API, parse this, compile it, and emit it. And that's it. So while that's a lot of work there, the amount of the API that I use is very, very little. So this is something that, again, is this vehicle for me to experiment, to try new things. It's really been good because it's forced me to learn more stuff about .NET, especially when nullable reference types came into play in C#8. Getting that to work in Rocks and generating the right code to do that was very difficult, much harder than I thought it was going to be for a lot of reasons. Go back and find all my old videos on that. It was definitely an adventure, and it was always a continuous adventure as types in the BCL were annotated with the attributes and stuff like that. So it was a lot of work. But when I heard about source generators in C# coming in .NET in C#9, I thought, I should be able to do this. I should be able to just take essentially all the source code generation I'm doing. I already have the infrastructure in place. I know what I need to look out for, but do it at compile time. Do it so that all that code is part of the assembly that's using Rocks. Okay. Now, one thing that this has the effect of is that I actually now have to use a lot more of the compiler API, which is fine. I've done a lot with analyzers and stuff like that, so I'm quote unquote comfortable with it. But that was taking some time. I've been doing a lot of videos recently on just getting stuff in place so that I can actually figure out what I need from the target type to build the mock. But I've now got it into a place where it works, but it's also going to be a breaking change because I have an API basically being built at compile time to work in a way I think is going to be easier. Okay. So that's the one really cool thing about source code generation is you can literally build anything you want as soon as the user does something. And that's an extremely powerful thing. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to show the current way of doing it. So you say, hey, I want to create a mock. Here's my expectation. I expect that the method target is going to be called with the value of 1. I make the mock, I call the method, and then I verify that everything actually happened. Now, I forget the person's name when I was at a conference a couple years ago called That Conference in Wisconsin Dells, but it was a person who built some product for ASP.NET, and might have been Greece, I'm not sure, but they were actually like bought out by Microsoft. So he works at Microsoft, and I was showing him this and he was like, it's really cool. Good. That looks really cool. Could you do like this, and this? And a lot of things that he was suggesting were all, could you build like a cleaner, better API, something like, or things that steer the developer in a different way and build all this stuff. And I said, these are all great ideas, but there was really no way to do this within C# in a way that it was native to C#. Like I could have conceived of a way to build an extension in Visual Studio to kind of sort of do this, but it was going to be really messy and a lot of work, and it would have only worked in Visual Studio. And, quite honestly, building extensions in Visual Studio is not something I want to do. And it wouldn't have worked for somebody on a Mac using VS Code or something like that. So I never went much farther with it. But now that we have source code generation, I can do that. So here's what I currently have. So you'll see that I have this interface IFU. I'm going to create a type that allows me to set the expectations, but it's different this time. So in this case, I say rock.methods. So this is basically saying, if you want to set expectations for a method, go here. Now, this is also something that is a little awkward. I'm not entirely thrilled about this, but I'm doing this in expectation of hopefully someday in the future that C# actually gets extension everything, because then you could actually do rock.methods dot. And that's basically saying for all the methods that you want to set expectations for, this is where you'd go. Right now I have to kind of do it. I have to do it as a method. Okay. But then I can do dot, and I've got my foo method. I've got my bar method. I've got my nulling method, stuff like that. These are all methods that are on that interface that I'm targeting. Okay. So right now, the way I have it here is I'm saying I expect that foo is going to be called with a value of 3 and a value with the string b. I am looking at making this so that it goes kind of back to what you saw here, where if you have literal value saying it has to literally be this, you don't have to do arg is 3. For right now, that's the way, but I'm expecting that I'm going to look to change that. But here's how I set all my expectations. Notice here that I have nullable types supported, both value and reference types. This was hardly, I think this was 5-10 minutes of work, and I had to fix one small thing compared to hours and hours of work to get nullable reference types to work before. This was almost an afterthought, which was really, really cool. The nice thing about using the compiler API is you have a lot of information targeted in a way that works for C# right out of the box. And so a lot of things just worked. So that was really, really nice. So then here I say, I want to create an instance of that mock. I'm going to actually call these things, and then I'm going to verify it just like I did before. But you can also notice here that if I ever want to look and say, well, what is if I go to instance here and I do an F12, I can jump right into the source code that was generated by my generator, and I can just start looking at all this stuff if I want to. Okay. You can see how this mock type, which is nothing different than what I've done before, just a couple of very small tweaks, but this is very similar to what I did before. It just works. Okay, it's all here. You can take a look at all of this. So a lot of things I had in before with rocks where I could say generate the file and save it to disk and everything else, that's all gone because it just happens. I don't have to worry about are you in debug mode or release mode. It follows right along with what you're doing in your project. Much, much cleaner. Okay. And in fact, I'm going to give this a whirl here, but this should work. If I put a breakpoint here and I say, let's run this test, which you can see the green check mark. So it is working. But if I run this test here in a debugger and I get to the instance call, once the debugger actually starts running, there we go. Okay. If I F11 into this, I go right into the source code generator. It's that simple. And then I can just step in. And so anything that is source code generated that uses C# source generators, you get this benefit. You can step right into the code. I can see what self is, that it's this thing for the extension method. It's glorious. It's glorious in the fact that of the power and capabilities you get from source generators in C#. This has just been a wild fun ride. I'm honestly, when I got this to work a day or two ago and got to this point and I did the arms up and, did the yes thing, I was truly happy. I was truly excited. It was such a great point to get to. And there's more that I need to do. I'm going to be looking at trying to do an alpha release of this sometime next week. .NET 5 is being released next week, so I want to try to be really quick on the tails of it, but it's not going to be It's not going to be ready unless I put in a fair amount of time this weekend, but I want to work hard on this to get it to a point where it can start to be used and tested. And then hopefully get a full release out very, very soon, just depending on time. But I'm very happy with the progress on this, and more work needs to be done. It's not done yet, but this is also because it's source code generated. It's using source generators. I think I have the opportunity to support some cases that you can't do with the current way of doing it, which is using expressions and functs and actions. There's some limitations with generics there that are very small, very corner case, but I think I can overcome those with a source generator. So that's all I have for this special episode. Thank you all for watching. Leave your comments and questions below. See you in the next episode.